Just now. Thank you. Okay, we're going to record this meeting, and we're going to ask that during the meeting, if you're not asking a question, that you keep your mic muted. Okay. I wanted to tell you that we have a new 14th Ward Democratic Committee YouTube channel, so that now our meetings that are recorded, we're posting them. The forum is up there. Our meeting last week is up there. This meeting will be up there tomorrow. So if you want to review anything about a candidate or tell other people, share it with anybody, it's a public YouTube channel. And we really owe a great deal of thanks to Rebecca Weiss. You can wave your hand, Rebecca. Rebecca is our ward secretary, and she is the whiz who set this up. It took her about, I don't know, just a few minutes to get it set up and get things posted there. Again, I want to remind everybody, if you're not speaking, to mute yourself. The other thing we also have that I wanted to remind people is we also have a Facebook page, and the Facebook page is 14th Ward and then PGH Democratic Committee. And it wasn't so active. We've been trying to keep it more active and let you know about what committee members are doing and what's going on. So I would ask that you go both to the new YouTube channel, that's 14th Ward Democratic Committee. And when you go there, you can subscribe, so you'll get a notice when new postings go up. And for the 14th Ward PGH Democratic Committee, you can follow that, and then you'll in your Facebook posts you'll see pictures of what's going on with other people. Okay, I'm going to ask folks to mute themselves. Okay, once again. All right. I want to remind everybody that the Allegheny County Democratic Committee endorsement meeting is this Sunday, February 11th, and it's at a new location. Old timers are all very familiar with going to the IBEW on the south side, but it's not there. It's at the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers Union Hall, which is on 19th Street and South Side. And if you're familiar with South Side at all, like where the real old timers, where the old Gimbel's warehouse used to be, and now also there's a giant eagle there, and just 19th Street at the end, you'll see right by the water is the Union Hall. There's a fairly good sized parking lot there, but not as large a parking lot as they have at the IBEW across the street. So there's a big parking lot there that's giant eagle and a strip mall, a bunch of other things. I think people can park there and also do on-street parking. So just wanted to make sure everybody knows that. I'll send out a reminder with the address and the parking information this weekend. And voting in the endorsement is one of your most important responsibilities as a Democratic Committee member. So I really expect everybody to be there. I'll be looking for you and we'll say hello. If you don't, track me down if you don't see me, because if I don't hear from you, I will call you after about 1:30 to make sure didn't forget to vote. And I know some people have told me they'll be out of town. I wanted to just take a minute to introduce some of our new 14th Ward Democratic Committee members, who were just recently appointed. We have Marcia Baumfield, and Marcia is from 14-2, which is along 5th Avenue down toward Oakland. And she's joining forces with Stanley Weiner, and Stanley Weiner is also on the call. We also have a new Democratic Committee woman kind of over near Chatham in 14-6. And she'll be joining forces there with blanking on 14-6. Oh, 14-6 at this point. We still are looking for a committee man. We're still seeking a committee man for that district. Kate Brownlee is on. Kate's here. Kate is, we welcome Kate. And Kate's district is around Carnegie Mellon University. We're also looking for a committee man in that district. On 14-10, we have Ellen Wilson. And Ellen is out of town, but will be back for the endorsement meeting. And her partner in that district is Will Sheridan. Deb Walrath is on, and Deb currently is in her car driving cross country. And she's in 1416, and she's partnering with Salim Khan. Lil Lauren, I don't know if Lil has joined this meeting. She was on our meeting last week. She's partnering with Stuart Gall, and she's over around Regent Square in 1419. And Gary Fisher is partnering now with his wife, Margaret Fisher. And they're the committee members for 1425, which is a little bit of Beechwood Boulevard and then on down, and a big piece of Somerset. So we want to welcome everybody. Okay. So this meeting is designed to help you learn more about the candidates. I sent you all the, in the MailChimp email that I sent out, it had the links to each of the candidates' websites, and I hope everybody had a chance to click on them and begin to familiarize yourself with each of the candidates. Tonight, we're going to be hearing for candidates from the Pennsylvania Treasurer, Pennsylvania Auditor General, and the Pennsylvania House District 34. And District 34 represents districts 12 through 18 in the 14th ward. So it's a smaller portion of the 14th ward. So before we begin, we're going to use the raise hand feature that we used last time, and Marie was helpful. We have some new people on the call tonight, so I was going to ask Marie to go over that. And you can either raise your hand digitally, or you can put a question in the chat. Either way will work. So Marie, go for it.
Yeah, so if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should have a set of controls that includes one called reactions. And if you click on that, you'll have various reactions, clapping hands, thumbs up, things like that, or raise your hand. So there's my hand up. Everybody, why don't you go for it and raise your hand? Fabulous. Can everybody see the raise hand options under reactions at the bottom? Looks like we're in pretty good shape here. Okay. And you'll also notice that if you hover over reactions again, you have the option to lower your hands. So why don't we go ahead and lower our hands? And
I want to ask everybody to please mute yourself. Laura, looks like you need to mute yourself. Thanks, Laura. Okay. And the one thing I wanted to tell you, we're about ready to have the candidates begin to speak. And if you look in your screen and you look at the very top right, you'll see there's 9 little dots and a square that make a square. And if you click on those 9 little dots, you'll see that it comes up and it asks you whether you want a speaker view or a gallery view. And I think watching the candidates, it's going to be much more helpful to you if you put yourself in speaker view. So I would just like to suggest to everybody, you may want to go ahead and put yourself in speaker view now that we've had a chance to see who's here, but you'll be able to see the candidates better that way. Okay. All righty. Okay. So, and with that, we're ready to begin with our candidates. So thank you very much. We're going to begin with Pennsylvania Treasurer, and Erin McClelland is on with us. So Ellen, you're going to have 3 minutes to make a presentation, and then we'll take questions from the folks on the call, and you'll have up to 10 minutes total. And I will, I'm going to keep time for you. So Erin, please introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. It's great to talk to Allegheny County. I'm in Lehigh County today doing a meeting out here with the rest of the statewide. But it's always good to see home. Yes, I'm a candidate for state treasurer. Just a little background for anybody that doesn't know me. A lot of it has been working in the treatment of mental health and drug and alcohol. I am a huge fan of our social safety net, and I was honored to start my career at Pittsburgh Black Action and St. Francis Medical Center, and working with the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force back in the day when the social services of Pittsburgh was literally one of the best in the nation. So I learned under some of the best activists in the United States how to preserve our social safety net. I went on to start my own business. It was the first orthomolecular medical center for addiction and mental health. I used the concepts of the Pittsburgh Regional Healthcare Initiative that was done with Mr. Paul O'Neill and a number of other great people that were working on that. We used those principles of root cause problem solving. I was able to raise $2 million in venture funding for that. And we were featured twice in Industrial Engineer magazine for the work that we were doing, pioneering in addiction and mental health. A big part of what I want to do here starts with really where Joe Torsella, the last Democrat to hold the seat, left off. We've seen a really, really heavy shift to the right with our current treasurer. We've also seen her abandon a lot of the responsibilities that state treasurers across the state are taking on. For instance, Joe back in 2018 was doing a lot with cybersecurity. And as we know today, this is a massive issue. If you look at the website for the National Association of State Treasurers, they are saying treasurers should be taking this on. I could not agree. Our current treasurer is not touching it. The Treasury has their own resources on this. There is no reason we can't be delivering knowledge, top of mind awareness, support, and grant funding to every municipality in the state. We are seeing Chester County lost $400,000 in a hack. The Aliquippa water supply was hacked. This is the very definition of the fierce urgency of now, and it is a top priority for me. On top of that, the Biden administration has done so many things on supply chain logistics. They've done trade reforms that are the best we've ever seen. Our current treasurer is not enforcing them in any way, shape, or form. And I think she's doing it intentionally so she can say that those policies are a failure. I want to enforce them. Third of all, Joe Biden has created a program through the FDIC to create mission-driven banking, particularly minority deposit institutions. The idea is to bring us back to small community banks that we lost after the savings and loan crisis. There is capitalization available through the FDIC. We only have 3 in the state, but they're very successful. 2 are in Philly. 1 is in Montgomery County. I would like to bring more of those to the inner city of Pittsburgh, as well as to the rural areas of Pennsylvania where they don't have small community banks. That's an opportunity there. There's funding there. There's no reason we shouldn't be grabbing onto that. And finally, we've seen a lot of talk about a public bank state, not just in this state, in Philadelphia, but throughout the country. Our treasurer will not be at the table on that conversation. I think we should not only be at the table, but we should always be leading the charge on that. Philadelphia has already done a logistics and feasibility study on this. I've done a deep dive that's on my website into what it would take to accomplish. It's a big lift, but I think it's worth looking at. So thank you all very much for your time and allowing me to present my platform. I can't hear.
I'm unmuted. It's going to take couple seconds for people to start raising their hands or putting things in the chat. So if you have a couple more things you want to say till we get our first question, feel free to any additional comments you want to make.
The last thing is our current treasurer works with a guy named John Arnold, who was an oil speculator for Enron, and his goal in life is to kill public sector pensions and ultimately privatize Social Security. They together have launched a program in Pennsylvania called the Keystone Saves Program. It is a disaster. They don't have approval from the state Senate to get it, so I hope they don't. But it is a self-directed IRA, which is highly dangerous. The Securities and Exchange Commission put out a 4-page alert saying, do not do this. Stacey Garrity wants to mandate it on every small business in the state that doesn't have a retirement, which means that we would be pushing this on bartenders and baristas. It is a dangerous, fraud-ridden investment product, and I think it needs to go. And if we're going to do statewide savings, then we need to do something that's responsible.
Okay. We have a question now.
Okay.
So TK asks, what do you hope to accomplish in the next 5 years?
Sure. First thing I want to accomplish is killing the Keystone Saves program and replacing it with something that is regulated and responsible. That's what we choose to do. I want to immediately engage Joe Biden's mission-driven banking program and get that started, start to see if we can get some of that money into capitalization for small community banks. where we need it immediately. But top priority for me absolutely is the cybersecurity program. This needed to be done years ago when Joe Torsella was talking about it in 18. Our small municipalities, our boroughs and townships are stunningly at risk. The Aliquippa water supply was hacked because they were using a default password that was 1111. We are starting at the very, very bottom. A lot of these people that are in these elected positions, they're not getting paid. They're not highly trained on these things. The treasurer's in a position to take all that information and support them. I want to take this office. I want to get outside that office and get into the 2,568 municipalities in this state and start giving them the support that they really need. And I want to do it immediately.
Do we have other questions?
So far in chat.
Well, let me ask one. I'm interested in whether in investing the state's money, whether you have priorities that you think you could accomplish some socially meaningful support through investment, and what would you do about that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things right now when we're looking at state treasurers and these investment funds is ESG ratings. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's environmental, sustainability, and governance. So right now we have things like Moody's and Finchers, and they're who's rating our stocks. The idea of an ESG rating would be to also rate not just the P&L statement of a company or how stable they are or profitable, but to look at their environmental policies, to look at their sustainability policies, and look at governance. How are they doing on diversity? How are they doing at paying their workers? How are they doing on workplace safety? Now, this is an early concept, and Stacey Garrity has been blasting away. I mean, everything in her power to say, this is bad, this is corrupt, this is horrible. I am for it. We're not there yet. I would love to be at the front row as everybody's talking about this to design the system so we can rate companies honestly and effectively in a way that brings real value, not just financially, but morally to our public sector coffers.
Thanks. We have another question that's come in the chat.
Linda Martin asks, what are the actual responsibilities of the treasurer? Maybe you can help us understand that better.
Sure. So you have 355 employees in the Treasury. You have right now we're at $163 billion. 48% of that $163 billion is the teacher's pension alone. Then you have two other pensions, the municipal workers' pension as well as the state pensions. So managing those pensions and the retirees of our state workers and our teachers is a huge part of this job. The treasurer also has a separate fund for all of our cannabis money because of the fact that cannabis is still considered a narcotic. We have to keep that in a separate fund. So if it would ever be seized as a result of a drug charge or issue, then you have to manage that. And there's the 529 accounts. As well as the PA ABLE accounts, which are savings accounts that are really, really good as far as how they deliver interest rates and are tax-free for our disabled population. So that's the traditional view of the treasurer. As I said, I think
you have about a minute left and we have a couple other questions.
Okay.
Marie, do you want to go to some of the other questions?
I just want to say real quick, the things that I mentioned before are all an expansive idea of the treasurer's office that other people are doing that I want to take on. Thank you.
Susie asks, where will you be looking for IT security experts, and how large do you believe this division of your organization will be?
So the Treasury already has an award-winning cybersecurity and monitoring program, and it's because they have $163 billion that they need to protect. And our Treasury is actually well regarded, and a lot of that was thanks to the efforts of Democrat Joe Torsella. I know our current treasurer likes to take credit, but that was his efforts back in the day. So the infrastructure, the staff is already there. Obviously, I would have to get in there and really see what's available and what else we would have to do. I can't answer that question without being in the office, but what I do know is there's a lot of resources already there. And there's grant funding through the federal government and CISA to actually create support products, toolkits, things like that. So there's a lot that we can do moving forward.
Thank you. There are more questions coming in the chat, but unfortunately we've run out of time. So what I would like to suggest is for folks who are posting these things in the chat to please send them directly to Erin and get a response from Erin in that way. Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any other questions anybody has via email. Thank you all so much for your time. I miss y'all. Take care.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. And the second candidate, the second Democratic candidate for the PA treasurer is Ryan Bizzarro. And there's many, as I said earlier, there are many things going on. He's not able to join us, but someone else from his campaign is going to come and speak for him. Caleb Buzard is here. Caleb.
Yes, I'm
okay.
here. Thank you, Liz.
So just to remind you, you've got 3 minutes to speak, and then it takes people a couple minutes to start getting their questions up. So I'll let you know when 3 minutes is up. People can start posting their questions, and then you'll have a total of 10 minutes time. Okay. Thanks, Caleb.
Liz, I appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. I'm sure you'd much rather see Ryan than me tonight. So I apologize for that. And Ryan apologizes. As we speak, he is currently speaking to a group in Lehigh Valley. So it was just one of those classic scheduling conflicts that was irreconcilable. But thank you all for letting me speak tonight. Ryan serves as the chairman of the House Majority Policy Committee, and in his capacity as a legislative leader, he has earned wide bipartisan support for his legislative leadership and for his record in the House of Representatives. And the kind of legislator Ryan is right now reflects the kind of state treasurer he will be, which is committed to service and committed to the people of Pennsylvania. And as our next state treasurer, Ryan is going to prioritize accessibility by opening up regional satellite offices across Pennsylvania to bring the Treasury Department to Pennsylvanians where they're at. Ryan is going to expand the College 529 savings program so Pennsylvanians have more money to earn an education and learn a new trade. Ryan is going to expand free financial literacy courses so Pennsylvanians aren't in the dark about the best financial practices for themselves and their families. He's going to streamline the unclaimed property system. Right now, the current treasurer, Stacey Garrity, is sitting on over $4 billion of unclaimed property and is not getting it to its rightful owners, the people of Pennsylvania. Ryan is going to streamline that system so that unclaimed property is given directly back to the people who own it, the people of Pennsylvania. And Ryan is going to expand the Keystone Saves program. It's a retirement savings program, the first of its kind in Pennsylvania, that was supported by a Democratic treasurer, Joe Torsella, and by a Democratic House majority, not to mention countless unions in Pennsylvania. That's because, like his colleagues in the House and like former Treasurer Torsella, Ryan agrees that you shouldn't have to work until you die. So as our next state treasurer, he is going to make sure that Pennsylvanians have a retirement plan that works for them. But this is more than a campaign for state treasurer. Despite what she might tell you, incumbent treasurer Stacey Garrity is the highest ranking radical extremist office holder in Pennsylvania. Stacey Garrity rallied insurrectionists at the state capitol on January 5th before sending them on a bus to attack our democracy at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Stacey Garrity supports a total abortion ban in Pennsylvania with no exceptions. And Stacey Garrity was one of the first statewide elected officials in the country to endorse Donald Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. She must be beaten in November, and Ryan has a plan to beat her. Not just because he's won every single election he's run in, but because he has won in a Republican majority district 5 times by building coalitions. And that's why right now he has over 200 endorsements, including from the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, former Governor Ed Rendell, Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey, the entire Allegheny County Democratic House delegation, County Controller Corey O'Connor, and City Controller Rachel Heisler. These people, these elected leaders, have joined our team because they trust Ryan to be our next state treasurer. And I hope you will all join our team too, because Ryan will be a state treasurer and run a campaign that will make you proud, not just as Pennsylvanians, but proud as Democrats. So thank you all for your time, and I'm thrilled to answer any questions if you have them.
Thanks so much, Caleb. And it's going to take a minute or two maybe for people to get their questions up. You can raise your hand or put them in the chat. If you have a couple other things you want to say while we're waiting for questions to start to come in, please go ahead.
Of course, I'll just say that again, Ryan apologizes he can't be here tonight, but he will be in Pittsburgh this Sunday at the Democratic endorsement meeting. So I hope if you're all down there, you have a chance to come and say hi to him and to our team, because I know he'd love to talk with you all. He loves Pittsburgh very much, and so he's appreciative of all the support we've received from Allegheny County.
So we do have a
Right.
question here from Debbie. Is Pennsylvania currently invested in Israeli bonds, and would you continue that policy?
Yeah, well, thank you, Debbie. I appreciate your question. Pennsylvania is currently invested in Israeli bonds. That's something that the incumbent treasurer, Stacey Garrity, did almost immediately in the wake of the attacks of October 7th. I'm sorry, I can't give you a really satisfactory answer to this question as to whether Ryan would continue this policy, because first of all, I haven't had the opportunity to speak directly with him on this issue. And secondly, frankly, I think this is an issue that we still have to fledge out from a policy perspective on our side. I can tell you that this is something that obviously is highly contentious and fraught with a lot of tension on both sides. So it will get due consideration by Ryan, and we will certainly look into whether this is a policy that we want to continue or modify in any way.
Other questions?
While we're waiting for other questions, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Erin. Does Ryan have plans for how he would invest money in socially responsible ways?
Yeah, so that's a great question because the state treasurer, as you know, is responsible for investing Pennsylvania's public assets and things of that nature. So Ryan is going to evaluate where is most necessary to invest public assets and see what might best yield the best return, not for people of Pennsylvania, but was also the most responsible return for the people of Pennsylvania. So obviously we haven't looked exactly at any particular programs or investments that we might be able to make at this time, but he is committed to being a responsible broker for the people of Pennsylvania and for our finances.
Great. We have some questions starting to come in the chat, Marie.
Margaret asks, how does Ryan differ from Erin in terms of policies and programs?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest difference that we heard even just tonight is that Ryan says he will absolutely not kill the Keystone Saves program because, again, Ryan agrees with Pennsylvania's union workers, with former Democratic Treasurer Joe Torsella, and with his House Democratic colleagues that Pennsylvanians shouldn't have to work until they die. And that's what the Keystone Saves program does. It institutes a first of its kind retirement savings program for the people of Pennsylvania so that they don't have to work until they die and so that they can be secure in their finances even into retirement. Listen, we have a lot of Republicans now, even including a leading Republican presidential candidate, who are saying not just we should raise the retirement age, but saying that people should continue working late into their life. That's something that as Democrats, we don't believe in. That's something that as stewards of the dignity of work, we don't believe in. And that's something that Ryan doesn't believe in. He wants to ensure that people have financial security when they're working and into retirement. And that's what he'll do by expanding the Keystone Saves program. You heard tonight, our opponent said that she would kill that program. We have a fundamental policy disagreement on that front.
We have another question, Marie.
I did not see any others. Maybe you could keep talking about that, other differences you see between the two candidates.
Right. I mean, the other difference is that, frankly, Ryan has a political record to run on that he's won tough races. He's endorsed by over 200 unions, elected officials, and organizations in the Commonwealth because they believe he can beat Stacey Garrity. They've put their trust in him. They've chosen him as our candidate, as their preferred candidate, and they want to see him win because they know he'll not just be a great state treasurer, but that he'll be able to beat Stacey Garrity in November.
Great. I see Rebecca's hand is up.
Yeah, just since Erin was talking about the cybersecurity risk, do you think that that's as big of a risk as she thinks it is?
Yeah, so we certainly think that there are cybersecurity risks in this issue in this area. Frankly, we haven't, from a policy perspective, seen a major cause for concern, at least to the extent that she was talking about tonight. But certainly that's something that I think as we continue to flesh out policy priorities beyond what we have outlined tonight, that's something that we'll absolutely consider if it turns out that that's something that is a major issue. But we think that it's more important to serve in a capacity as treasurer that actually makes people's lives better in a tangible way. We're not concerned with chasing down things that might be problematic or might not be. We're concerned with implementing policies and programs that actually makes Pennsylvanians' lives better and helps working families. That's through financial literacy, that's through a more accessible Treasury's office, that's through the 529 college program, and that's through Keystone Saves. These programs, when implemented by Ryan as our state treasurer, will make a tangible impact in the everyday lives of Pennsylvanians and working Pennsylvania families. That's what we're concerned about, and that's what we're going to do when we're elected as treasurer.
Thank you so much, Caleb. You've really done a good job of speaking for Ryan Bizzarro. It's been helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I'll just say really quickly, I'll put our campaign contact information in the chat. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to us. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Caleb. And now we're going to move on to the Pennsylvania Auditor General race. Our first candidate who's going to speak to us is Malcolm Kenyatta. Malcolm is currently serving in the state legislature. And Malcolm, let me just remind you that the candidates have 3 minutes to speak and then answer questions from the members, take up to 10 minutes. It can, sometimes it takes a minute or two for the questions to come in. So I'll let you know when 3 minutes is up. And if you still have a few more things you want to say, you can do that while we're starting to collect questions. So welcome, Malcolm. We're glad to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Ms. Liz, and I'm happy to see you. And thank you to the entire 14th Ward. It's a real privilege to be with you. I'm in a union office here in Lehigh County, which I don't have my usual beautiful background, but nevertheless, thank you all so much for this opportunity. 3 years or a little over 3 years ago, I'm sure that all of you sat stunned, angry, watching people show up to our nation's capital, armed with not just weapons, but armed with lies. Many of those lies told not just by national leaders, but by so-called leaders here in Pennsylvania. And those lies have gone on unabated. And I start there because I don't think I'll get much argument in this group, I hope not, that's a real threat to our democracy. But we also face a competing threat of people who aren't showing up to the Capitol, and they're not going to show up at the poll to vote because they don't believe that there's anybody in it for them. That's why I'm so happy to be running to be your next Auditor General, because the Auditor General is the one role in state government that's about finding ways in which government isn't working and bringing people together to fix it. I truly believe that not only do we deserve a government that works for working people and working families, but we can have a government that works for working people and working families. I grew up in a working poor family in North Philly. My dad was trained as a social worker, my mom as a CNA, and she spent most of her life as a home health aide. We grew up in a time and a place where, when I think about this cold winter we're going through, we needed La Heap to get through the winter like we're having. We needed SNAP benefits. My mom needed WIC. When my parents found themselves in between gigs, they needed unemployment and needed it to come quickly, not wait 2 and 3 and 4 months like so many people had to during the height of the pandemic. I bring that up because so often we talk about audits or the work of making sure government works efficiently as this hypothetical intellectual exercise. But this is real for so many people and so many families. And I'm proud to say that in this race, every single union without exception who's endorsed in this race has endorsed us. that we've been endorsed by nearly every member of Congress, by a majority of my House colleagues. And I bring that up because that's what it's going to take to have the recommendations that we put forward actually implemented, this ability to look across government and bring people together. I see myself as having three big priorities. Well, let me say four, but the first is really just beating an election denier. Our current Auditor General doesn't accept the results of the elections, and I hope that you all agree with me that if you don't accept the results of the election, you shouldn't be able to serve in public office, period. But three big priorities after we win. First is to restore the Bureau of School Audits, because soon after my opponent stopped lying about the election, he got rid of the Bureau of School Audits. And so we are no longer doing annual compliances school audits in our schools. That's a big mistake. We'll bring that back. The second is to create a new Bureau of Labor and Worker Protections to go after things like wage theft, wage splitting, to make sure that the legislation that we're fighting so hard to pass right now in the House and in the Senate, that those things are actually implemented in a way that workers see a difference on the job every day. And then finally, and I'd love to get to your questions, is to use this office to not just find the bad actors, and I promise you we will, but also to lift up the good things that are happening. When Allegheny County or Erie County or Monroe County figures out something great, we ought to be sharing that. And as somebody who's traveled to all 67 of our counties, not only campaigning for our Democratic candidates, but for our values, I get very frustrated when I see somebody doing something incredible in their municipality, but folks don't know about it. And that's a part of the way that we save money, save time, innovate in every one of our counties, and then let the best ideas bubble to the top and share those ideas. And I can't do this without your help and your support. I really would love to earn your vote, but more importantly, right now, I'd love to take your questions.
Thanks, Malcolm. Have any questions started to come in yet, Marie?
I'm looking for hands. Wait, here's one. Okay, so this is a question from Kathy Smith. Malcolm, will you audit charter schools?
You're damn right. I will tell you this. I was really proud that, along with my House colleagues, we passed the largest investment in K-12 education in Pennsylvania history, and we're going to do it again. But in this moment, it's also clear that that's not a pinky promise scenario. We have to make sure those dollars that we appropriated actually get to where they're supposed to get. And a part of the reason the current Auditor General was supported so heavily by the same folks who spent money against all of our judges. If you all remember, and if you got some of those nasty ads against our judges who just ran this last cycle, almost all of them, about 95% of them, were funded by the Commonwealth Leaders Fund. They funded my Republican opponent to the tune of $1.8 million to become the Auditor General. It's about 84.4% of every dollar that he raised. And a part of what they didn't want to see is a real accounting of what's happening, in our cyber charters as a real big problem area, but also in some of the brick and mortars. I'm committed to auditing every single one of our schools, because anywhere a child is, they ought to be getting a quality education.
Thanks, Malcolm. I'm seeing things in the chat. Marie, is
Yeah,
there
one
another
more
question in the
question.
chat?
Yep, so this
Okay.
is from TK.
Okay.
Can you provide an example of a complex audit engagement you've managed in the past, highlighting the challenges you faced and how you successfully resolved them?
Thank you for that. A part of what makes me uniquely qualified for this is I've spent a lot of time in state government, over a half decade at this point. I am really proud to be the Democratic majority chair of our subcommittee in Commerce on financial services and banking, to be on the finance committee overseeing Pennsylvania's tax policy, to also serve on the Judiciary Committee because I'm not busy enough tackling complex issues. But most, I think, relevant is to be the chair of the Democratic Subcommittee on Government Operations. And if you look at the legislation that I've worked to advance, including the Clawback Act, which would help us codify and also in some quasi-government agencies reimagine for the first time the way that we pull back state dollars that are used not appropriately. The reality in this moment is that we need somebody who understands how to look at the complex systems that make up our state government. I have done that. I have voted on, amended, been involved deeply in the process of where all of our state dollars go. Now the question is, how can I make sure that all those dollars, all those years that I help appropriate actually are getting to where they're supposed to go and are actually providing the types of services that they're supposed to provide? The Auditor General is actually not, in fact, the state's accountant. I promise you, we have a lot of accountants. This is not about just finding if we missed the decimal somewhere. This is about having a clear vision and setting an agenda. What the Auditor General's office doesn't have right now is a leader, and it's leadership that's sorely needed that I'm going to provide. And I'm happy to say that my professional experience doesn't end at the college degree that I acquired. Before I came to the legislature, I worked at the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, working with small business owners, well, actually businesses of many sizes, about the challenges that they have. And so as the Auditor General, as the watchdog, as the public advocate, it's your job to ask hard, tough questions, and then to manage a team of people to demand and get those answers. And then you have to, once you put out the solutions, you have to then be able to do the work to make sure you don't just have a report that sits on the shelf, but that you know how to bring people together to actually get those recommendations implemented. I will give anybody on this a sticker next time I see you, if any of you have read one of the Auditor General's audits, the current Auditor General. Many folks have not. And so I think the question is, has the Auditor General talked about things, elevated issues that actually make a difference in your life? We've seen it with previous Auditor Generals, including Senator Casey, who was not an accountant, did not have a finance degree, but I hope that you don't disagree, was a damn good Auditor General and is making a great senator. And so we need a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives in government. I think that I bring the best perspective. And I think when we look at the support that we've earned, without exception, whether it's members of Congress, whether it's organized labor, whether it's people who are in or outside of government, without exception, folks have supported this campaign, because you don't get to be Auditor General if you don't win. And we're building a broad, diverse coalition to win.
I think we have time for one more question, Marie.
Okay.
Is there another question there?
Nothing more in the chat, just some useful links and going.
Oh, I
doing
see
well with
Tom has his hand up.
signatures, in Allegheny County. Tom Askell's hand is up.
Hi, Tom.
Oh, hello, Malcolm. I was just wondering what you think the public or private entity is that deserves the most careful scrutiny in our state.
That's a good question, and I'm going to have to go back to Tom what I said before about restoring the Bureau of School Audits and reimagining it. We just had a budget address from our governor Tuesday, just yesterday. Jeez Louise, right? Just yesterday. And before that, we had a Commonwealth Court decision that made it clear we were not adequately funding education. And then after that, there was a BEF commission, Basic Ed Funding Commission report that laid out an approach of how we do that. The governor, for his part, has recommended $1.1 billion in new additional funding to begin to make the type of down payment that's necessary. As I said in my beginning comments, that's wonderful. I'm going to fight like hell to even go beyond what the governor said. We're going to fight for every dollar we can get. But that can't be a pinky swear situation. We have to ensure that those dollars are actually getting to where they need to get to, and that we're actually addressing the chronic concerns that parents and students alike have and that they're seeing every day in the school buildings that they're going into. And so I thought it was a big mistake when the auditor closed down that bureau. We're going to rebuild it, and we're going to build it better than it was before.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. We really appreciate it. This has been really helpful to help us understand more about all the candidates. If people have more questions for Malcolm, you can, I think in the chat, there's an email address that you can email additional questions to Malcolm.
Yeah, Michelle put my emails in and everything else. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. And our next candidate now for Pennsylvania Auditor General is Mark Pinsley. And Mark is, you'll have to tell us where you're serving, Mark. I was going to say you're in the state legislature, but I think that's not right.
No, that's not correct.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
so welcome. I just want to remind you that candidates have 3 minutes to speak, and then we'll take questions and up to 10 minutes with the questions. It often takes people a couple minutes to get their first question or two up. So I'll let you know when 3 minutes is up, and you may have a couple more comments you want to make while people get their questions up. Okay?
okay, that's perfect. First up,
Thanks, Mark.
I apologize for being in the dark. Malcolm and I are actually in the same spot. He got the room, I got the car. So I am running for, my name is Mark Pinsley. I'm running for Auditor General. I do like to remind people that it's not Attorney General. So we are about the money, not about the drama. And so Malcolm and I are running against each other. What I wanted to say basically is, and so we're all Democrats. And so what I thought I would do is spend my time trying to draw light between, Malcolm and I. And basically, if you think about it, if you are looking for somebody who will stand up against pharmaceutical companies, if you are looking for somebody who will stand up against the big banking companies, if you are looking for somebody who will stand up against the DAs when necessary, or someone who will stand up against the criminal justice system, or someone who will stand up against the Department of Human Services, then vote for me, because I've already done those things as controller. I'm controller of Lehigh County. The controller is basically like the auditor general, but at the county level. When I talk about the pharmacy companies, I went after the largest pharmaceutical company east of the Mississippi. And because we have employees that we pay for over $23 million, I found $3 million in savings on the pharmacy side, which turned into $9 million over the life of that contract. I also found $4 million on the medical side, which turns into $12 million over the life of the contract. In terms of the big banks, when the Dobbs decision happened, I looked at Wells Fargo, who's our main bank, and they're donating to anti-choice candidates. So I made a recommendation that we divest all $145 million out of Wells Fargo and put it into a nonpartisan bank. When we're looking at the DAs, the DAs, of course, get paid by the state. So we get to audit them. Most recently, and we pay the county as well as the county. One of the things that I had done is I wanted to see the amount of bail that was being set forth by the judges. The DA did everything he could not to allow me to have that information. Eventually I got it, and I was able to show the two judges give $20,000 bail no matter what. You steal a pencil, you steal a car, $20,000 bail. People can't afford that. On the criminal justice side, I've done audits of all different types. We're working on an audit right now, which is looking at the cost of solitary confinement and what it costs the county, not just in terms of absolute dollars, but also in terms of recidivism. There's a lot of statistics on that, and we're bringing that to bear. And then in terms of the Department of Human Services, this is one of the ones that's important to me. Out here, if you were out in Lehigh County, you would see all over the newspaper now, there are lawsuits against our largest hospital provider and the doctor. And that came about because of an audit that I did where I was able to help people have a voice. It turned out that there was a doctor that was misdiagnosing medical child abuse. I found initially the first parent. I started to do an investigation. Ultimately, I found 15 parents. It was very difficult to put out because everyone was against me, including the DA, including the commissioners, including the hospital. But I put it out anyway. And ultimately, I found 150 families that have been impacted by this after the report went out. I started getting calls from all over the state about this same issue, not always the same doctor, but similar issues about guardian ad litems, about the judges, a whole bunch of things. So when you're thinking about the difference between Malcolm and I, when he's talking, when he's talking about our legislative issues, what I'm talking about are financial issues. My background is I have an MBA in finance. I have my undergraduate degree in finance. I have worked at multi-billion-dollar companies managing multi-million-dollar budgets. So I would appreciate your vote. If you're looking for somebody with experience, that would be me. And I'm happy to take some questions.
Good. It's time for people to start posting questions. Have any come in yet, Marie? Do I see Marie? Anybody have questions? Anybody want to raise your hand? Let me see. One of the things that I am interested across all these races, particularly where there are offices that are currently Republicans have been elected to,
Yeah.
thinking about the electability of the candidates, so that we really have an opportunity to return a Democrat into those offices. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things is like that auditor was a controller prior to his run for auditor general, and now he has actually been the auditor general for 4 years. He has a good education. He's got a financial background. When you're looking at Malcolm versus myself, Malcolm's background is in communication. My background is in finance. So I'm more likely to be able to go toe to toe against him, in order to win the seat back. Also, most people don't know what auditor general is. And a lot of the time that we need to spend is educating the public, over educating the public on what this is and why we need to vote for it. I mean, Malcolm was right. This is a massively important position that is underutilized.
We
Okay,
have
do
another question that's come in from the chat.
Yep, several questions. So one is a question that was also put to Malcolm. Would you audit charter schools?
I would audit charter schools, absolutely. So one of the things that Malcolm had talked about was the Bureau of Schools. Now that had been around previously and obviously didn't really have any positive impact in terms of the budget that was going to schools. It is an important audit in the sense that it stops people from doing the wrong thing, right? It's like the IRS. If you know the IRS is coming, you don't do the wrong thing. In this particular case, what we can do is we can actually create a report that talks about the economic impact of funding the charter schools, of underfunding our public schools, how the arts have an impact, how extracurricular has an impact. We know that we're underfunding our schools by $6.2 billion. So the goal is to create a report that the public can get behind and also provides the litigants with more stuff, if you will, to go to the courts, so that they can get, so that they can hopefully get even more money than what the governor is suggesting.
There's another question here. How does medical malpractice fall under an auditor's job?
Yeah, so medical malpractice does not fall under the auditor's job. What I was able to do was show that there was a statistical anomaly where many people were being misdiagnosed in this particular case with Munchausen syndrome by proxy. What I did is I brought that to light, and then I called for an additional investigation, both from the Medical Malpractice Board as also from just an outsider coming in and looking at how children and youth work internally. So I really have nothing to do with medical malpractice. What I have to do is with the numbers. And when I was talking about the numbers, what I was looking at is, what is the cost of foster care? What is the cost of kinship care? What is the cost of the lawyers for the children? What is the cost of the lawyers for the individuals? What are the costs of all of the services that we end up having to offer? So that was the direction that I came at it from. But ultimately, I'm for the people, not the powerful. And so I was trying to do something for the people. And that's what money is about.
I have a question. So I'm curious, I think it's really interesting that you want to use the auditor's role to look at practices like cash bail and solitary confinement from a financial perspective. I
Yep.
guess what I'm wondering is, then you put together a report and where does it go? And I'm wondering if that's where Malcolm's legislative experience is important. It's sort of like, how do you move from a report to action?
Yeah, I mean, I've already done it. So in other words, I've already taken reports and put them into action. I mean, if he was able to do this, he would already be doing it, right? As a legislator, that is what you are trying to do, is move the legislators to vote for something. He doesn't have to be Auditor General to do that. He could do that as a rep. What I'm able to do is not just show the reps who are important, but who is more important are the public. So what you're doing is you're going out to the public that are impacted by this, and you're getting them to show up to the meetings. So like when I want to make change, what I'm doing is I'm going out to the people that are impacted. So I did a report on the phone system where I showed that for every dollar that a prisoner spent, 70 cents of that came back as a commission to Lehigh County. Last year, we had $750,000 in commissions. So I wrote that report. I went out to all the families. I'm having them come in and talk to the legislators to get change.
Thank you.
Yep.
There was also a question from TK.
Oh, did I miss something?
He said,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, he said, what systems would you develop for reducing the number of errors in your report?
Oh, I mean, there's already systems available. So basically, I mean, one of the things that you end up taking a look at, so we are already members of a variety of different organizations. Those organizations have best practices. So the goal is to move more and more towards those best practices in order to reduce the number of errors that happen. Ultimately, also, you're looking at so there's two errors. There's the errors that we make. And, you know, in order to accommodate that, you know, we have multiple people that QA a document. But then there's the errors that we find on the other side. And normally what we're doing is we're going in and making recommendations on how to change their process and procedures. And quite honestly, probably the number one thing is to have different people doing different things. So for example, you wouldn't have somebody in accounts payable and accounts receivable doing the same job. You would split that up into two different jobs. And we see things like that all the time that can reduce theft.
Mark, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That completes your time.
Thank you.
I really want to thank you. It's been really helpful. I want to let people know, Mark, if you'll put your email address in the chat, that anybody who may have additional questions or follow-up questions they want to ask, that they can address them directly to you. So
That would be
thank you.
great. Thank you very much. Mark Pinsley, running for Auditor General.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks so much, Mark.
Yep. Bye-bye.
And now we're going to move on to our local House race. In Pennsylvania House District 34, which the 14th Ward, the 12th through 18th districts are in that House district. There was a special election held last year, and in the special election, Abigail Salisbury won the special election and has been serving for a little less than a year now. We have two candidates running for that office now. And is Abigail with us now? Is that, yes, okay.
Hi.
So Abigail, I wanted to invite you. I just want to give you a quick, what we do is you have 10 minutes total, 3 minutes to ask questions, and 3 minutes to make a statement, and then people ask you questions up to 10 minutes total. Where I tell people that typically when your first 3 minutes is up, it takes a couple minutes for questions to come in. So if you have a few more thoughts you want to share, you can do that while questions start to come in.
Okay.
So welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Abigail Salisbury. Today is my election birthday because I was elected 1 year ago today. So I was elected in the special election process. So I took over what used to be Summer Lee's seat after she moved on to Congress. I like to think that I add a little something different to this seat. I'm the first LGBTQIA identifying person to serve in this seat. I'm the first Jewish person to serve in this seat. I'm the only Jewish woman in the Pennsylvania House. And I'm the first person on the autism spectrum to serve in this seat. If you have anybody in your life who is on the autism spectrum, you probably are aware that we think a little bit differently and sometimes are a little bit blunt and express ourselves differently. So I like to think that that brings maybe a little bit of a different perspective on being a legislator. I was on Swissvale Borough Council for 5 years prior to taking over this role. I was Borough Council President for 2 years. I became very aware of the infrastructure challenges of the district when our borough building fell down with people in it in March of 2020 when I was Council President. We had been warned that the building, which was originally built in 1907 to house the horses that pulled the fire engines, might not be in the best of shape, but we had not necessarily expected it to collapse. And it was really a miracle that nobody died, because Borough Council chambers collapsed through the ceiling of the police department and the Department of Public Works, where the DPW workers had been sitting and having coffee about 15 minutes beforehand. So as I moved on in my council presidency, we faced more and more challenges. The Washington Avenue Bridge has been closed because Norfolk Southern won't fix it. It's in worse condition than it was when the Fern Hollow Bridge collapsed and that bridge was in. So it's at risk of a train derailment. That moved me on to understanding issues about Norfolk Southern long before people were talking about Norfolk Southern. I could go on about the water infrastructure issues, our roads here, but really we have a lot of infrastructure challenges in the community. I've worked really hard to bring the 13 different municipalities together because we have to work together. These are little communities. 450 people are all that live in Chalfont, 1,600 in Braddock. So I tomorrow will be having my second annual meeting of all of the elected officials in the district. That's over 100 people. We try to get a representative from every district so that they can tell me what to work on when I go into appropriations and what bills I can run to help them and what other ways I can assist them. Because when I was on council, people did not call me back from the state government, and Public Utilities Commission did not call me back. PennDOT did not call me back. I don't want people to have that experience. So I try to be a liaison for people. I have a meeting on Friday with East Pittsburgh to try to work on an intersection with PennDOT for them. I also started the nonprofit caucus in Harrisburg. I'm a nonprofit attorney. You're in my law office, where I provide reduced rate legal services to nonprofits and small businesses that otherwise might not have access to legal services. So 15% of Pennsylvanians work for a nonprofit. The vast majority of those work for one that brings in under $1 million a year. So we really need to make sure that we are serving that component of our workforce, because those charities fill in valuable gaps where government does not get it done. So I think really what I'm focused on is infrastructure, bringing these communities together, helping the nonprofits and small businesses that make up the fabric of our community. I'll pause there, so maybe I can take some questions.
Okay, good. All right. We'll wait for questions to start to come in. I don't think we have any questions yet. Do we, Marie?
Not yet.
I see a hand up.
Here comes a hand. Rebecca.
Hi, I have a question about PWSA. We seem to get a notice in the mail every month that they're going to be raising rates again. And I think if my math is correct, it's going to very quickly overcome some people's actual rent and mortgage payments. And in a city where we talk a lot about lack of affordable housing and need for more affordable housing, we don't hear a lot of people talking about affordable utilities. And I'm wondering what the role of a state rep is in doing this, and if you've dealt with the PWSA, and if there's anything that can be done and what you would do.
Yeah, so my district has 2 different water authorities. We have PWSA where you live. We also have Wilkinsburg Penn Joint. The Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority is regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, whereas the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint, which we have over here in Swissvale where I live, is not regulated by the PUC. You might think that you'll get a better result if you're regulated by the PUC because they have a consumer assistance sort of advocate at the state level, but guess what? Nope. They are raising your rates between 60 and 70%. I testified at the PWSA hearing that they're required by law to hold when they raise rates. My background prior to being a nonprofit attorney is I was an international human rights lawyer. I worked in Kosovo and Ethiopia doing things of that nature. Something I can tell you is that the United Nations considers water and sewer access to be a human right. The United States decided not to vote for that. We did not vote yes on that resolution, tragically. So in the US, it is up to us to advocate for our own rights on water and sewer access. So I testified at that rate increase hearing that we should focus on water access being a human right and not being out of reach for people in a time when we're experiencing unprecedented, well, I shouldn't say unprecedented inflation, but unprecedented in my lifetime, let's say. So I think that we have to keep pressure on these public utilities to make sure that not only do we have affordable water, but that it's also lead free, because we do have a pretty significant lead issue in parts of the city. And sadly, that maps with the lower socioeconomic areas of the city. So unfortunately, it's another burden that's being placed on people who don't have the money to be able to afford to replace those lines themselves. So this is something I've actually put a lot of work into, water access over the past 11 months that I've been in office, and it's something I intend to keep working on in Harrisburg for people. We do have a role to play when it comes to utilities, and we have to play it.
Thanks. There's some more questions that have come in, Marie.
Yeah, we've got a few questions. Debbie asks, the governor's interested in instituting school vouchers. How do you support vouchers?
No. I believe that vouchers draw money out of the public schools. You know, this actually, I had a flashback to the 90s because vouchers were a Tom Ridge administration issue that was the topic of my speech and debate program one year in high school. So I grew up around Erie, so Tom Ridge is a beloved character up there, but I was not a fan of the voucher program then, and I'm not one now. I understand why people want to take advantage of them. I have 3 school districts in my state house district. All 3 of them are in the bottom 15% of the state, so they would be eligible for these, what are being now called Lifeline scholarships. They've been rebranded from vouchers. I don't support them just because I believe that a lot of these charters and cyber charters and other things that people spend vouchers on draw money out of the public schools. And we should really be investing money in our public schools. As some of the prior candidates mentioned when I was eavesdropping on their conversations, we need to invest more money in our public schools. I was pleased to see yesterday that Governor Shapiro was announcing huge investments in our infrastructure of our schools, the physical schools themselves, as well as education. We need to make our public schools so good that nobody would want to go and use a voucher to go somewhere else, is my goal.
Next question. What are the most important things that you've done in the past year in the legislature?
Oof, I would say something that was momentous for me. I don't know whether it qualifies as most important, but I think it's quite significant. Was Dan Frankel, Representative Frankel, has run, I think for over 20 years, the Fairness Act to try to make LGBTQIA rights a part of the Human Relations Commission in Pennsylvania. As a member of the LGBTQIA community, you can look and see me kind of all I'm not a snuffly, teary-eyed person normally, but I was that way in those pictures because I thought that that really was a meaningful thing that we were able to pass that through the House. Unfortunately, it looks like it's unlikely to pass through the Senate just because of the Republican-led Senate not moving our bills along. But hey, we just can keep pushing for it. But I think it was a step in the right direction. It was very personally meaningful for me. I think important for the LGBTQIA community as well.
Nice. Can you elaborate on what you've learned about Norfolk Southern and why are the railroads so difficult to work with?
Because they're the worst. So if you talk to people in the state legislature, they will tell you that about 150 years ago, people took campaign contributions or, you know, who knows, just bribes. I don't know, anything went back then. And we sold our soul to the railroads in this country. I fought and fought and fought to try to do something about the bridge over here. Railroads in Pennsylvania are regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. It is the policy of the state of Pennsylvania to transfer these little municipal bridges. They call them highway bridges, but there's no highways in Swissvale other than 376. Like this is a little 2-lane road on Washington Ave. So it's basically a bridge that goes over the East Busway and over the railroad tracks that run along there. It is the responsibility of the railroad to maintain the understructure of the bridge, and it is the municipality's responsibility to pave it. Unfortunately, there is nothing left to pave. Not unlike the roof of my law office, which when I purchased it, the roof was so bad that the roofer went through my upstairs tenant's living room ceiling when they were trying to redo the roof. The decking on this bridge is so poor that there is absolutely nothing to hold the pavement up anymore. And so it's just been closed at this point. The railroads do what they want. They all give to pretty important people who make big decisions in DC and in Harrisburg, and they have done so for generations and generations and generations. We do not enjoy any power to regulate the railroads in Pennsylvania anymore. It's quite disgusting. Representative Matzey, who lives right on that line between PA and Ohio, right by the East Palestine derailment area, he's in Darlington area in Pennsylvania, has passed a wonderful, wonderful package of railroad reform bills that are absolutely not going to go anywhere in the Senate. So we sold our soul to the railroad in the 1800s is what I learned about Norfolk Southern.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Do we have time
Abigail.
for one more?
And we don't, we're over time.
Okay.
But what I'd like to ask, Abigail, if you could put your email address or where people could send questions to, because I think we may still continue to have some questions come in, so that people can, you'll be able to respond to questions. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And now we're gonna, Ashley Comans is with us, yes? Yeah. And Ashley Comans is running also for this seat. Ashley, just to review, you have 3 minutes to make a statement and then take questions from the people on the call, up to 10 minutes. I'll let you know when your 3 minutes is approximately up, and then we'll take questions. People can raise their hand and ask questions, or they can put them in the chat. So welcome, Ashley. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I have audio on a different phone because internet. So good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Comans. I'm a school board director in the Wilkinsburg School District. I was originally elected back in 2017. So just a little bit about how I got involved in politics, because I didn't think this was going to be my future. I thought I was supposed to be a news reporter on television. But 2016 happened, and I realized that just showing up to vote wasn't enough. And so I had decided to run for school board, showing up to support someone else running for office. I ran that race, and when I knocked on doors during that race, the number one issue that my community told me about was our high taxes for our school district. And so once I won the race and was elected school board, the big thing that we were really focused on was how do we give relief to our community? And so what I'm really proud of we've been able to do in Wilkinsburg is lower our taxes. We've reduced taxes 6 meals for our residents, which has been a really big relief. And in addition to doing that, we've also made some improvements to our school districts. We restructured to a primary and intermediate school system so we can really strengthen that early learning system for our young people. And we've also been able to offer Spanish pre-K to 6, which was a really big deal because our kids, with our partnership for Pittsburgh, they weren't able to get into certain magnet programs without having that language. So we really dug in and invested in our kids and made sure we created the best opportunity for them. What I also have been a part of is really mobilizing and organizing this community, or this region, that I should say, that has really raised me. I've been involved in a lot of organizing, a lot of campaigns, ballot measures that have truly been transformative for our communities, whether we're talking about the virtual ban on solitary confinement in the county jail, as well as Breonna's law in the city of Pittsburgh. That was work where we were out in the community, knocking doors, getting to know people and bringing them in, because we know that our government is at its best when it's reflective of the people that it wants to represent. I have been really excited about this campaign and what we've been able to do. It's been very intergenerational and very diverse, bringing a lot of people in. So far, we've knocked 2,000 doors on this race so that we can make sure we're getting out and pulling in the vote, because we know in 2024, this is going to be such a huge determining factor for our communities. And what I know, especially being here, speaking with the folks of the 14th Ward, you all know something about organizing, because that's what's really important, to make sure that we're activating voters, we're bringing new people in, and we're letting people know that we hear them and we see them, and we're fighting for issues like fairly funding our public schools, protecting a right to choice with reproductive justice, passing something like paid family and medical leave. I've been in Harrisburg multiple times, speaking and advocating to push this legislation through. And also, we need to strengthen our majority in the House and flip the Senate. And I know that those are things that we're able to do, and we do that by meeting the people where they're at and bringing them in. And so I'm in this race because I also know the role of a legislator is not only to pass good to policy and work across the aisle with other legislators, but it's also to bring the voices of our community into Harrisburg. Because what I know about seeing our governor yesterday give his budget address, I know that that work and that focus of the budget is because of what we've been doing on the ground to get our voices and our stories into Harrisburg so that our people who are making choices for our communities know what's important to us. And so what I want to do is bring that energy into Harrisburg, because we're not only in need of organizing our communities, but we know we need to be able to organize our legislators too, because they need to hear the voices of the people. And that's always been what my work has been about. And I look forward to hopefully being able to continue that. And I hope that I could earn your support to do just that.
Thanks, Ashley. I want to tell people while you start to get your questions together and put them up, I wanted to let people know that I had my screen on speaker view, and I was just seeing a black screen that said Eric on it. And then when I just switched myself, and I want to remind people, if you're on speaker view, go to the top right corner to those 9 little dots that make a square and put it on gallery view, and then you'll see Ashley. It looks like some questions have started to come in.
Yeah, I want to start off with the question that TK put a little too late to get it to Abigail, but Ashley, maybe you can start with answering this. What programs, investments would you use to serve the Black and Brown communities as well as the LGBTQIA communities?
So I think there are a lot of things that could be done. What I'll start with is, of course, public education is really big for me. And so what I know, the school districts that specifically in this district, Woodland Hills, Wilkinsburg, and PPS, we know that there are a lot of improvements that need to be made so that our young people are being invested in, whether that's making sure they know how to read, making sure that they have the resources that they need, whether it's from special education to gifted programming, also investments in out of school time. I've done a lot of work prior to currently working with Healthy Start in the maternal and child health space, but with APOST and after school programming, and really just investing in exposing our young people to opportunities that if they're not a part of these types of programs, to keep them safe and to show them new things, then they don't know what they can be. So ensuring that we're working with our local community organizations and after school programs that are investing in our young people. Also, you know, the Fairness Act that I know we've been hearing a lot about. I think it's really important that we also recognize that Harrisburg, we have a lot of polarization. And so I think what we can do is have a trifecta. I think when we get the opportunity to actually have all three, branches of our government under Democratic control, we can really do some powerful things. And so passing things like the Fairness Act and making sure that we are bringing the experiences and the voices of those who are most impacted to the forefront, because I can't speak for all people, but I know that I can bring the voices of them up to Harrisburg and be impactful on the types of legislation that we would pass.
Thank you. I know that Rebecca's hand has been up. So Rebecca, you want to go next?
Thanks. I'm going to ask the same question. That we're seeing our water rates consistently go up and up and up in Pittsburgh, and we keep getting notices that they're going to continue raising them, and we're starting to see them compete with rent and mortgage payments. And I wanted to know what your experience has been working with utility companies in previous roles that you've had, and what you would do if elected about this increasing, I think, going to be a crisis.
Yeah, so I have, I'm a member of PA United. And so the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority, actually, that's, you know, the one that I've dealt with honestly all my life. I've actually always been in their service area. I've done a lot of work with the community on bringing attention to them not having a customer advisory board, shut off notices for $1, and bringing the voices of like the community that has just felt unrepresented or not listened to because we've had such a closed off process with the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority. So specifically what I was able to do is Like I said, I'm from this neighborhood. And so when I began to organize with PA United, I actually knew the board chair of the water authority because I graduated high school with his daughter. And so when we were showing up to protest, because we couldn't get in touch with them, I actually went up to Mr. Simon and reintroduced myself, congratulated him on his new grandson that was born, and then asked him, hey, I'm outside with some folks who have been having some trouble getting in touch with you. They're not getting their answers addressed. And so we'd like to get some information so we can sit down and have a conversation. And I know that that was a really big point for the work we were doing with the Our Water campaign, because we were able to start sitting down with them. We were able to then bring that concern from the community to our elected leaders, who were then able to apply a little bit of pressure to them. I know I spoke with Senator Costa, who basically made it clear. He said, hey, they wanted some grant money, and I let them know, if you want this money, I need you to respond to the community and start this advisory committee. So I would utilize that same type of pressure that I know the community can apply with our businesses, our utility companies, if you will, because if we don't apply pressure, they'll just continue to take advantage of our communities. But I'm very vocal, and I'm very persistent, and that is the type of push that I would take into Harrisburg to hold these companies accountable.
We have time for maybe one more question. Do we have another
more?
question?
Okay,
Yeah.
this is Debbie's question. Do you support school vouchers?
No. As a proud public school parent, as a school board director in Wilkinsburg, school vouchers are not the answer to fairly funding and providing a quality education for our young people. What I always bring up when people bring that particular idea up, that's a good idea, is what about the young people who don't have parents or folks in their lives that can advocate for them when people say they want to make a school choice option? Our home schools should be the top priority for our families, and they should feel confident in sending their kids to their home schools. That's exactly why I ran for school board, because one, I believe in public schools, and I know that they are capable of providing a high quality service to our communities. We just have to apply pressure, bring more people in, have folks understand what school boards actually do. As a school board member, sometimes, I'll be honest, I feel like people don't recognize the power that they can have by engaging with their school boards. And so I want to be a legislator that strengthens that and encourages more community members to be involved, because when we strengthen our public schools, there won't be a need for vouchers, because parents can trust that the schools they're sending their kids to that are down the street are more than qualified to educate our young people.
Thanks so much, Ashley. We really
You're welcome.
appreciate your joining us. I think it's really been helpful. People have had an opportunity. Ashley, I'd appreciate it if in the chat you could put your email address. So if there's additional questions, because we really encourage people, if they have more questions, to do follow up, that they'll be able to reach out to you with any additional questions they might have. And
Yes.
with that, I really want to thank all of the candidates who participated tonight. I think it's been helpful. I think we've had some really interesting conversations. You also have email addresses for, well, you have email addresses. You also have the websites for each candidate, so you can do more research on them. We promise not to have these meetings run long, and so I want to try and wrap it up. I want to remind everybody to come to the endorsement vote on Sunday. You can vote between 10 and 3. It's not going to be at the IBEW this year. It's going to be at the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers on 19th Street and South Side. You all got a blue card in the mail. You didn't get a blue card in the mail, I should hold mine up, but it's from the ACDC and says that you're authorized to vote. If you haven't received one of those, they ask that you call the Allegheny County Democratic Committee office either on Thursday or Friday and confirm that they have you listed. If there's any problem, I will happily get involved in making sure that every committee person has the ability to vote. So I'll see you on Sunday. I'll be looking for you if you know, like, come and say hello if you see me. I want to make sure everybody votes. by about 1:30 or so. If you haven't arrived, I'm going to start calling people to make sure that you realize that the cutoff time is coming and you need to come over and vote. Okay, so thank you for a really good meeting. This has been recorded. The recording is going to be posted probably tomorrow. Becca is our great secretary who started the our YouTube channel, which is Pittsburgh 14th Ward Democratic Committee. And this will be up there tomorrow. You can, if you want to share it with anybody else or review any questions, you can do that. So thank you. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, everybody, for participating. See all the Democratic Committee members on Sunday. If you have any petitions you want to turn in, bring them. Good. See you then. Thanks. Good night.